social media is very important. It kind of correlates to your brand story. And once you have a brand, very important to put it out there. Because while I may talk to 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people one on one, the reach of social media is just unimaginable. You're reaching out to the entire world.
Arpita, it is our pleasure to have you on board, and our students and our audience are eagerly waiting to hear from you today. The first thing that we would want to understand from you, how was your journey from being a student to a successful designer, and moreover, a celebrity designer?
So, talking about how all of this happened, I'm gonna take you through my school time, college time, to when actually everything came together. So I did my schooling here in Mumbai itself, and I must say I was a very good student. I was very hardworking, not that intelligent, but I was the one who could really study a lot, read textbooks, give my exams very sincerely. And towards the years of my school, I was obsessed with fashion magazines. So I used to go and buy these second-hand international magazines such as Vogue and Elle and Harper's and all of these. And I was very enthralled by the content that it carried, the editorial, the clothes, the fashion. And I think that was when I realized that fashion is my passion. It is something that I love. But then 10th standard happened. I got a good score and I landed up doing science for 2 years in my college. And that's when the big question came about. What is it that is going to be next? Is it going to be medicine? Is it going to be engineering? But that's when I thought that I need to do something that I'm going to be excited about doing all my life. It has to be something that I'm passionate about. So that's when I decided to study fashion. I mean, it wasn't a very easy choice because I had to convince my family to let me do it. So at that time, I gave my entrance exams for medicine, for engineering, and fashion. So while I did get through engineering and medicine, I topped my entrance at my fashion college. And I think that was a sign that, okay, fine, I am meant to do fashion. So I studied fashion here in a university in Bombay, and I did a 3-year diploma course. And while we were doing the course, it was kind of really important, and it is something that we realized at the end of it, that it's very important to be very attentive during all your classes, to pay attention to what the teachers say. Because at that time, it seemed very lengthy, but it is only later in your real life that you realize that these things are something that build your base. And once your base is strong, you can achieve a lot. So after finishing 3 years of my diploma course, I interned and then I went on to work for 2 years with one of India's leading designers. And after I decided to leave, I had 3 options. One was either I go abroad and study. Second was I work with another designer. And the third option was that I start out something on my own. So to be honest, I didn't have the funds at that time to go abroad and study, even though I'd really want to, but that wasn't possible. And I think by the time I studied and worked as well under a designer, my ideas were too strong to kind of work under someone else and adapt to someone else's concept. So it only left me with the third option, which was to start something out on my own. And of course, that was something that wasn't easy. I was coming from a place where I had no background, no friends or family in fashion. So I had to start completely from scratch. And it took me a good amount of time to even put a team together. I think it took me almost around 2 years to find the right kind of masters and the embroiderers and the people who understood my vision and who had the capability and the capacity to turn my ideas into reality. And I think it is in those 2 years that I realized this education as well as practical knowledge, they go hand in hand. it's extremely important because when you're talking, when you're dealing with workers, they do not understand anything. You have to be extremely precise, you have to be very detailed about what you want to do and what you want to achieve. As they say, the struggle is real. It took me very long. I've had rough days and like endless nights not being able to sleep, trying to figure out the right kind of people. And it is only my practical knowledge and my education and my base that made me strong and that made me pull in the right kind of people to create the correct team. And I think it was finally around in 2009 that I had the confidence to be able to create a line which felt nice. And I think by then I was comfortable enough to call myself a fashion designer. So I think that was the whole process of being inspired, being really passionate about something really early on in life, but then of course being able to convert it into your actual calling in life is a different thing altogether, and one has to go through different phases to come to this at this point.
Uh, did you had any of your special and favorite subject where during your education you paid emphasis on? Because many times we have realized that the students miss on and focus on few and leave the rest. So how do you think how important it is for all the students to equally devote their time in all the subjects and focus on the content that has been delivered to them?
So I will tell you a little bit about my experience in college. So our college focused a lot on pattern making over creativity, and at that point, we used to really wonder why are they paying so much attention to pattern making and the technicality of things. This is so boring. This is just not exciting. I don't want to say this, but we were really irritated about this whole situation and how that colleges abroad they gave so much attention to bring out your creativity and to kind of nurture your brain. And the case here was something completely different. But it's only when you go through the process do you realize how important it is. Because in real life, what you imagine, it is not easy to produce. And that's what we learned in college. We used to have a lot of pattern making classes. We used to have textile classes. We used to have sketching classes. And each of these classes are very important in shaping you as a wholesome designer. As a designer, it's very important to have your technical base very strong. I think it's a bonus point if you can sketch well, because that's how you can explain your team and your workers and your karigars what you want to do. And of course, it helps you in lots of various ways. And then, of course, when you talk about textiles or when you talk about your different history of fashion, all these things, they kind of give you the knowledge. You become like a bank of fashion knowledge that one must possess, because that I think makes you versatile. It makes you capable of trying out, of experimenting different things that one must before starting out on their own.
So, is it that, Arpita, that you have to be a good illustrator to be a good designer, or a good pattern master to be a good designer?
I think a pattern knowledge in pattern making is more important than illustration. It's definitely good to be good at illustration, and I think that is a bonus. It's an added point if you're a good illustrator. But pattern making is extremely important. It's very important to know the way a garment fits, the garment falls, the different kind of fabrics, the touch and feel, and yes, I think that's very important.
Also, nowadays, there are a lot of fabrics which are coming up and a lot of blends are coming up. So, it is very difficult for a student to keep in update with what is happening around because fashion keeps changing. So, what is your take on it? I mean, how do you keep yourself updated with what is happening around the world and in the fashion industry?
I think this is more of a personal choice, because as a brand, you have a look that you stick to. And to stick to that kind of a look, you kind of play within the vicinity of the fabrics that you generally use. For example, in a brand like mine, we use softer, free flowing fabrics. We never go for stretch fabrics, or we never go for something which is completely offbeat. But that is something which I choose to do. So when we talk about fabric trends, yes, you do have to keep in track as to what is going around in the world. Like supposing if I'm using 5 different kind of fabrics, say silks, chiffons, crepes, organza, my focus out of the 100 other options will be on these 4 fabrics in the new versions that come out every year. Sometimes you may have a pure fabric, maybe you have a viscose blend, or you have another third new treatment done to it, by which, of course, you have to keep reinventing yourself every season. And when you're talking about reinvention, it is the entire look, and it's also about upgrading. And I think price is also a very important part. So one has to, while keeping track of the trend, should also be very aware of the prices of all these fabrics and what kind of correlates to your garment and your product is important.
Okay, do you have a brand philosophy for your own brand? I mean, is there anything that you have defined that I'm going to follow this? And we also want to know, do you follow the forecast? Because forecast is a major subject in our curriculum. So many a time students ask that India is such a vast country. Do we actually follow, and designer, do they follow in India the forecast?
So I think answering to your first question, I mean it's something that I started doing long back when I was trying to crack my own signature style. Is more so as a brand philosophy. When I make a garment, I think, is this something that I would love to wear? If I love to wear this piece, I'm going to make a collection out of it. And I think that's how it all started. And I think that's how I get produce all my collections. When we make a sample, do I love it? Am I going to wear it? If I'm going to wear it, I'm going to make a collection out of it. And I think that's something that I've followed through all my collections. And I think that is my brand philosophy. And coming to what was the second question? Sorry.
It was about the forecast.
So talking about the forecast. So I, being an Indian wear designer, I technically follow the Indian calendar, which is your spring, summer, and autumn, winter. So it's more like a resort collection, and then we have the wedding collection. And that, I think, is very applicable to Indian designers and who are doing Indian wear, because people follow these seasons here more than following an international trend. But yes, I do refer to trends when I'm doing prints, or when I'm following up on my colors, or what is the treatment that I'm going to do or that I'm going to give to my collection this season. Because so many times you have, okay, there's a kind of an African feel going on, there's a tribal reference going on, or there is like a military reference going on. So there are different kind of trends which are constantly going on every season. So I kind of take inspiration. I don't take it as it is and make something out of it, because what goes on internationally is very different from what happens in our country. So I take bits and pieces, your colors, your prints, and maybe the treatment to it to kind of make my collections.
That's wonderful. Also, Arpita, I mean, it's very exciting. For many of the students, they would really want to know is when you were graduating and you were in the final year, or when you wanted to start your brand, how did you identify that these are the categories like Pret, bridal that I'm going to get into? How do you make your signature style so strong?
So, to begin with, firstly, when I did start out on my own, like I mentioned earlier, that I started out right after I was working, and for 2 years, I didn't know what I was doing. I think it took a long time because I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I'm going to do. I didn't know how I was going to do. I just knew that I wanted to do this, but I didn't even know how to start. So that was, I think, my biggest struggle. And over the period of time that I was experimenting is how I actually came onto the final product. It is not something that happens overnight. It is something that kind of takes time. So to tell you about how I kind of cracked my signature style is back in the day when I was experimenting, I'd say, I made a lot of rubbish comments as well. And I really wasn't happy. So that's when I decided to go back to my drawing board and ask myself these questions: that do I love what I'm making? Am I going to be able to wear it day and night, or am I going to be able to sell this product or convince a client or a buyer to pay me an X amount of money? And the answer was no. I mean, I was not confident of my product. I wasn't really happy about what I was creating. So I had to dig in deeper. I had to go back to thinking about something that I love, something which is very true to myself, something is that was really that got me very excited. So the idea was to take a very honest and a very genuine approach towards innovation. So that's when I remember that as a child, I used to love wearing these mirror work lehengas that my mom used to dress me in. And that's when I decided that why not take this craft and create something out of it, because it's something I love. It is something that hasn't been done for a long time. It is something that no one else is doing. So that kind of even makes it unique. So that's when I took that idea, I experimented with it, and then I decided to make a modern version of it, something that would be accepted as a fashion product, that like something that could be worn in multiple ways by different kinds of women, not only worn for a specific event. So I think that it's about going down deeper into what you feel is important to you, but at the same time has to also be commercially viable. It has to be unique, it has to be different. And I think that will kind of help you realize what your signature product or your signature style is.
We also have studied and we have understood that your forte lies in bridal, preth, and celebrity wear and fusion also.
Yeah.
So we wanted to understand from you what are the things that you keep in mind while designing, because your designs are very young, very quirky. I think people who are very young and people middle aged, all of them would want to buy with a little alterations and little change. But how do you think and design for all these categories that you are your forte lies in?
So, firstly, I think it's very important to know your product. And once you know your product, it's very important to know your clients. You need to know who are the women who are going to buy your products. Like, do a little study of them, research them. Like, ask yourself these questions: why are these women who are out there? Why would they want to buy your product? Once you have a little understanding of that, I think that naturally kind of leads you in the direction that one must take. Because even when I was creating my lines, and while I was making, first I started out actually only with bridal, but that's when I realized that there's also a major need for doing lighter stuff. And when I say lighter stuff, more fusion stuff, more prep stuff. And when I say fusion, I realized that the bracket of women who want to wear fusion is between your teens going up to your 40s. And post the 40s, they want to go into another kind of outfit. They are the ones who kind of go into pret. Pret is something that caters from the 20s to the 60s. So I think once you get in deeper into understanding what your client wants, that's when you can start designing different lines for different kind of women.